How's it going, everybody? Noah Holly here, and you're watching a very late edition of the Pride Report because this microphone always finds a way to ruin my recording experience somehow, and of course that was the case today as well. When it went out after the first clip that I recorded, so I spent an hour working on this, and it all sounded terrible because this thing... Ugh. I think the reason was, because I know that I plugged it in. I think the reason is that this thing is kind of inconsistent. This is my, this is the thing that powers this. It boosts the sound. But I have some good news. I got this thing now. This is like a mixing board. I can probably plug my guitar into here too and do some cool stuff with that. So once I get this going, I should be able to put these videos out later because it's probably not going to take as long to record if I can actually get my first take to work because the microphone is cooperating. But anyway, let's just jump right into the show. We got a lot to talk about today, so let's just hop right into it. Saturday was one of the craziest days of the college basketball season, so we're going to be taking a look at some of the action that went down that day. One of the reasons that this was one of the craziest days of the season was this game in particular. Boston College knocked off #1 Duke, handing them their first loss of the season. Kai Bowman fell an assist shy of a 30-10-10 triple-double, and BC earned their first win over a top-ranked team since beating Syracuse earlier this decade. Now, I'm not crazy surprised by this. Of course, I predicted that Duke would win like literally everyone else. But I also know that no team that starts 4 freshmen is invincible, especially when they're this mediocre on defense. Like, you had to know that it was coming at some point. And Duke has a target on their back. Every single time they go on the road, they will be met by a hostile environment and every single team's A game. This is why I have no idea why so many people thought they were going to go undefeated. It's just not possible. Like, no matter how many lottery picks are on the roster, it's just unrealistic, especially when a team plays in the ACC, where every night will pose a different challenge, as we saw on Saturday. I think that Duke has to be a little bit tougher from here on out, on both sides of the ball, especially defensively. I'm not saying I don't expect them to slip up a few times here and there, but like I said, defensively, there just aren't many positives for Duke right now. If they can be a little bit more disciplined and play to their potential on that end of the floor, they could still be a 15-16 win team in the ACC. But like I said, I'm not expecting them to come back every time they're down. That's just a little bit too much to ask. So, I mean, I'm just not going to give them any hate. I think Boston College was well prepared. I think they played fantastic. They were amazing. They won this game considerably more than Duke lost it, in my opinion. I mean, they made it really tough for the Blue Devils to get going down low, especially late when the Blue Devils are trying to pull away. They took away Bagley in particular. He was really ineffective down the stretch, which has just not been the case for him this season. And they hit every shot they needed to. They were just draining from behind the arc. Jim Christian had his team ready to win from the get-go, and they didn't let him down. I think that Boston College could be someone to watch in the ACC. They have a really good backcourt led by Bowman, who was no doubt the best player on the floor on Saturday. I guarantee you this will not be their last upset in conference play. This game was so much fun. Colin Sexton and DeAndre Ayton went head-to-head Saturday night. Both were fantastic. Ayton scored 29 points and grabbed 18 boards for his 9th double-double this season, and Arizona earned the win over Alabama, who got 30 from Colin Sexton and 15 from Dante Hall. Arizona won their 4th straight since going winless at the Battle for Atlantis, dropping out of the rankings and causing everyone to overreact. I just wish more people would realize that the season is just too long to completely write off a team due to a poor stretch before New Year's, especially when that team has this type of talent. I think the Wildcats are a top 15 team right now. Obviously, the rankings don't reflect that, but, and I'm going to say this a million times over the course of this season of the Pride Report, the AP poll means absolutely nothing. I think that Arizona has proved in the 4 games that they've played since their poor performance at the Bahamas that they are everything that we expected them to be this season, and they still have a ton of potential to be even better. I just don't see how anyone is going to be able to slow down DeAndre Ayton. And the return of Rawley Hawkins is great news, too. Hawkins is a great passer and defender. He's just one of those guys that seems to do everything well. And I don't think a lot of people realize how important of a piece he is to his team. Arizona really suffered when he was out for the first 9 games. And freshman Brandon Randolph has been really good as well. After scoring 6 points in Arizona's first 5 games, he scored double figures in 4 of his last 5 and has emerged as one of the Wildcats' top scoring options. And in terms of the Tide, we just got to give Colin Sexton some more love. He is the complete package. He is so much fun to watch. You know, I mean, if I hadn't watched DeAndre Ayton on Saturday night, I probably would have said right then and there, Colin Sexton is the best player in college basketball. I mean, he can shoot, he can drive, he's lightning quick, he's well above his years in his ability to draw fouls and attack the rim, and et cetera, et cetera. And, like, for Alabama, the supporting cast is there, too. I was really impressed by Hall. I thought he did a really good job producing down low. His performance, in my opinion, is just as pivotal to the team's success as Sexton's because he's one of only 2 true big men on the roster who get a considerable amount of playing time. All in all, great game here. I just love when college basketball programs schedule these non-conference home and homes. These types of matchups just feel so much bigger with a true home court environment. Chris Chiozza scored 15 and Florida knocked off Cincinnati on Saturday to snap a 3-game losing streak. Florida showed plenty of signs of offensive life in the win, which is great news for a team that couldn't break 60 against Loyola Chicago earlier in the week. Florida's backcourt really stepped up in this one, which has to happen if the Gators are going to return to their winning ways. Florida just doesn't offer much up front, and that's going to continue to be the case most likely until John Egbunu returns. So they need their perimeter attack to consistently knock down shots and be more aggressive, and that just wasn't happening for them in their last few games. I think that the Gators still, in a sense, rely heavily on their ability to knock down shots from behind the arc. It can definitely fail on you, but you know, I think that they had much better possessions overall against Cincinnati, and I think that, Chris Chiozza is arguably the biggest playmaker on the team, and he just hasn't been making much noise as of late. When Chiozza can get going, the opponent will have to worry about much more than the three-pointer because of Chiozza's ability to open up the offense. And the less that Florida settles for shots, which I think that they were doing against Loyola and FSU, the more games they're going to win this season. I think that's just the reality. And in terms of Cincinnati, they lost their 2nd in a row. Kyle Washington scored 11 for the Bearcats, who amassed a season-high 21 turnovers in the loss. Wichita State pulled away from Oklahoma State late. Landry Shamet went off, scoring 30 points and hitting 4 3-pointers. Early on, Wichita State was really sloppy with the ball, however. If you watched them play for the first 14 minutes of this game, you would have thought it a miracle that Wichita State was able to win. With 6 minutes remaining in the first half, the Shockers had a total of 9 points and 12 turnovers. They just couldn't get anything going. But once Shamet clicked, however, there was not much Oklahoma State could do because he had one of the best games of his life. He was absolutely phenomenal. Jeffrey Carroll really struggled for the Cowboys in the loss, making just 1 field goal. He's been really inconsistent since returning after being withheld for the first 3 games. Oklahoma State needs him to step up in games like this, and he was just quiet all night long. Wichita State was kind of dealing with the same thing with one of their superstars. They only got 3 points on the night from Shaquille Morris, but luckily, with Shamet playing so well, they didn't really need anyone else that much, so they were able to earn the win anyway. But even though Shamet was amazing, the player that probably impressed me the most in this one was Oklahoma State's Mitchell Solomon. This guy is such an underrated talent. If you watched the CPP podcast last year, you would know how big of a fan I am of this guy. I just think he's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, he always finds a way to deliver. He never panics. He's 20 for his last 23 from the field. That's pretty impressive. Plenty of other quality action on Saturday. Notre Dame went on the road to play Delaware, which is a little strange, but I definitely respect that. They knocked off the Blue Hens to get back on track after being upset by Ball State earlier in the week. And Arkansas demolished Minnesota, who just looked god-awful on defense. I mean, the Gophers had no answer all night long for Arkansas's backcourt. The Razorbacks got a combined 59 points from that unit. I mean, man, I don't know about the Big Ten. If Minnesota isn't as good as I anticipated, then this conference is crazy weak behind Michigan State. Also, Seton Hall destroyed VCU. There are so many good experienced players on this team, and they all came out and put on a show on Saturday night. I mean, this team showed flashes of Elite Eight material. I've watched a lot of Seton Hall this season, and I have to say, I'm really impressed. I will be advancing them as far as reasonable in my bracket this year for sure. And finally, West Virginia survived a major upset on the road at Pittsburgh, who made a furious charge late in the second half but could not maintain it. As a Virginia fan, I'm really glad that West Virginia did not lose to Pitt because, as you know, UVA lost to West Virginia earlier in the week. And if the Mountaineers were to go on the road and lose to Pittsburgh, who is one of the worst teams in the ACC, actually probably the worst team in the ACC by a very large margin, that would have been pretty frustrating. But anyway, West Virginia earning the win there and winning their 9th consecutive. Other ranked teams that rolled to wins on Saturday included Michigan State, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Xavier, Baylor, and Tennessee. Now let's take a look at what went down on Sunday. This one, I have a lot to say about this one, so bear with me. Arizona State cemented their status as one of the nation's best teams on the road at Kansas. On Sunday, Trey Holder scored 29. Freshman Remy Martin scored a career-high 21 off the bench, and the Sun Devils rebounded from a brutal start to score one of the biggest upsets of the season. Arizona State took the lead from Kansas with 15 minutes left in the second half and never looked back. I mean, what a win. It takes a special type of team to just come into Lawrence and casually walk out with the victory, but that's what Arizona State is this year. They're a special type of team. Shannon Evans also scored 22 for the Devils, who got a combined 72 points from their trio of guards in Evans, Holder, and Martin. What's even more incredible than that number is the fact that ASU was able to get this type of production from their backcourt on an off night from Cody Justice, their three-point sniper who starts and has scored in double figures in 6 of the 9 Arizona State games this season. This backcourt could realistically be the best in the country. They are absolutely loaded. One of the most remarkable parts about this win is that, watching this game, it's not like Kansas played horribly. I mean, against Washington earlier in the week, Devontae Graham had one of the worst games of his career, and no Jayhawks scored in double figures except for 2 players. And in this one, yeah, I mean, they missed a lot of threes, but everyone in the starting lineup was relatively solid, especially Graham. He had 19 points. He was very good, and LaGerald Vick was phenomenal. But, I mean, Arizona truly outplayed Kansas on their home floor. Do you know how hard that is to do? They didn't allow themselves to get rattled by the environment, whatsoever. After regathering themselves early on, they just didn't appear intimidated at all. And every time Kansas tried to make a run in the second half and the crowd, got back into it, Arizona State kept them at a distance, and they made a big-time play to shift the momentum back into their favor. It was remarkable. So how good is Arizona State? I mean, obviously, I could be overreacting here, like most people are about this team, I'm sure. But in my opinion, they're the team to beat right now. They're the best team in the country. I mean, I just have a really hard time imagining that any team is capable of outscoring these guys for 40 minutes. If Xavier and Kansas, on their home floor, couldn't do it, Kansas was the only team on their home floor, but the win over Xavier was still impressive. But if neither of those guys can do it, then who can? And, especially with Remy Martin playing this way, I want to talk about him for a little bit more. He was so good. He showed flashes of superstardom throughout the contest. I think that Bill Walton actually made a really good point, which is a true rarity. But he said that if you had never watched basketball before and you just happened to stumble in to the Fog Allen Fieldhouse and watch that game, you would have thought that Remy Martin was the best basketball player on the court, and I think that he was. He was just so efficient, at attacking the rim. Not that many freshmen can put on that type of show in such a hostile environment, especially this early into their careers. That was only the 9th game he's ever played. Martin has emerged as a consistent scoring option on a team that really doesn't need one, as Holder and Evans are already two of the most prolific scorers in the country, and Jess is capable of going off on any given night as well. And in terms of Kansas, they're going to be fine, of course, but I do worry about this team a little bit because I'm not sure that they have someone that they can turn to that can bring them back when they're down. I'm just not sure that Graham, like, as good as he's played, is the true leader that Kansas was hoping he'd be. Like, he's not Frank Mason, he's not Josh Jackson in terms of leadership. I don't know if Kansas has a guy that they can turn to in the huddle when they're down at home, on the road, whenever, and say, look, you need to go out there and get some baskets, and trust that he's going to do that. So that is a little bit worrisome. Only time will tell, but of course it is concerning that they have essentially lost back-to-back home games. That's pretty un-Kansas-like, don't you think? Other action on Sunday, Villanova was tested against LaSalle, but survived behind 18 from Dante DiVincenzo to ensure their spot atop the AP Top 25 rankings. Villanova proved that even on a serious off night, it's still going to be ridiculously difficult to beat them. And Gonzaga hammered Washington. The Huskies that beat Kansas on Tuesday just did not show up last night, and what resulted was a game that wasn't remotely competitive for the last 30 minutes of action. Jonathan Williams had a double-double in that one, and Purdue and Florida State also rolled to wins. FSU stayed undefeated against Tulane, and Purdue also destroyed IUPUI to get their 10th win on the season. The new AP poll is out, and as expected, after a wild week, there are tons of changes. Villanova is the new number 1, followed by Michigan State, Wichita State, Duke, and Arizona State. I'm really glad that the Sun Devils were put so high. They got 5. I believe that they had 5 first place votes as well, which honestly surprised me because I thought that I was the only one that thought that Arizona State was the best team in the country at this point. We also had Arizona and Texas Tech return to the poll, while Nevada, USC, and Minnesota dropped out. Florida State debuted at number 19. I think that this is pretty accurate, although I think a ton of teams should be ahead of Kentucky, who literally hasn't beaten anyone this season. I just don't know how you can say that Texas A&M, with away from home wins over USC and West Virginia, should be lower than Kentucky. I just don't get it. But of course, the AP poll top 25 means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things, so no reason for A&M fans to get heated about it. In another bit of news, Wisconsin's disastrous season got even worse Saturday, when it was announced that Demetric Trice and Kobe King would both be out indefinitely. This is going to have to be the Ethan Happ show from here on out. He has got to be consistently dominant to ensure that Wisconsin doesn't embarrass themselves in Big Ten play. But judging by their performance lately, I think that's going to be the case no matter what. Since, like I said, I am not going to be previewing tonight's slate because there's really nothing to talk about, this is going to be the end of the show. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I really hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. If you did, remember to subscribe and to follow the show on Twitter at CPP Pride Report. All links to Twitters below. But I want to take a second to discuss what I have coming up on the menu this week. I have a loaded week because, as you know, if you watched the first episode, Thursday is the last edition of the Pride Report before I go on Christmas break, and will not post again until after the new year. So I'm going to be cramming a lot of the stuff I want to talk about before conference play into these next 3 shows. For example, like tomorrow I'm going to be breaking down when I think each of the remaining unbeatens are going to lose for the first time, which conference I think is the best, just diving into that stuff. Also, who is and what has surprised me the most this season. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be talking hoops with Tony Patelis and Sean Bach. They're going to be joining the show. That one's probably going to run much longer than most of the Pride Reports do, because I'm probably going to make it more of a podcast, but, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I have a lot of stuff that I'm looking forward to talking with those guys about, so definitely check that out for sure. And then on Thursday, which is, like I said, the final Pride Report before the new year, I'll be providing a full preview of the holiday slate. So, definitely stay tuned for some more great content coming up very shortly for the CPP YouTube channel, and especially right here on the Pride Report. But for now, I am out. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Sorry it came out a little bit late, but I think it turned out alright, judging by how many times I had to re-record this. Yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.